Welcome, everybody, to the Nick Saban Show, indeed presented by Alpha Insurance. Protect your cars, home, life, and business with Alpha. And joining our media guest, from whom you have already heard, James Spann, the head coach of the Alabama Crimson Tide. Nick Saban, good to see you, sir. How are you?
Good to be here. Great to have James Spann here. You know, he's the official weather forecaster for Alabama football.
He is.
We call him on numerous occasions and get exactly when it's going to rain, how much it's going to rain, what time it's going to quit, how much the winds are going to blow.
Yeah.
We got it all.
Most of the time we're right. Not all, but most of the time.
That's all right. You can't argue with
It's
that.
like you can't win them all in football. You can't get them all right in weather.
No.
Yeah.
But
Well,
You know the feeling.
I don't think either one of them is very predictable.
That's right.
That's very true. Hey, Coach, totally off the beaten path for a moment, and I don't even know if you have a personal recollection, but Dick Butkus passed away today.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Oh, man,
he
that's...
was 80 years of age, and everybody in football has either met him, coached with him, played, what have you. He was quite the character, wasn't he?
He was a great character, great player, great person, and you know he's legendary.
Yeah.
And he was one of the guys that made the linebacker position kind of the man,
Yeah.
you know, so to speak, that made the whole defense be what it is. And great competitive character, great toughness. But you know, one of the things I loved about Dick is we've had several Butkus Award winners here.
Yes.
And he always came and personally gave the guy the award.
Yeah.
It was so important to him that whoever was getting the award, it's not like these other ones are named after somebody. You go to ESPN and, pick them up on some TV show. He came personally and sat down with every player and gave him the award and spoke with them and spent time with them. And I just thought that was fantastic, that he had so much respect for quality players and quality players at his position that he would make a special trip. And I think we've had 2 or 3 guys that he came to see. And that was really special, and it was my opportunity to get to know him a little bit, and he was a special person.
He's hitting somebody up in heaven tonight, I'm sure.
I hope not hard.
Yeah, but he was quite the talent, and we hated to see him pass away. And one other note that has no bearing on the University of Alabama, except we're all in this world together. I hated to see that story today about LSU's safety Greg Brooks, who has brain cancer and is now being treated as best he can be in Baton Rouge. Whether it's me, whether it's him, whether it's a family member, whomever, you just hate to see that.
Well, absolutely, and our thoughts and prayers are certainly, out for him and his family, but I think it puts a lot of things into perspective for a lot of us.
Yeah.
Sometimes we take our health for granted, we take other relationships and people for granted, we take our family for granted. But none of those things should we take for granted. We should be thankful and very appreciative that we have good health and we have good relationships and we have a family and all that. And I'm sure this young man is getting a tremendous amount of support.
Sure.
LSU fans are great. He's got a great family and they got a great program. So I'm sure there's a lot of people there that are going to support him. But I'm just hopeful that our fans will all share in thoughts and prayers for him and his well-being in the future.
Exactly. James, why don't you jump in? Let's start zeroing in on the man seated to your right here.
So I asked my social media followers some questions, and almost 90% of them were not for you, but for you.
For Miss Terry.
Miss
huh?
Terry, right. They want to know more about this whole situation where you said that you were basically under an order to kick up the intensity a bit. People would like to hear a little more of the backstory here. How did this happen? When did it happen? What exactly was said here?
Well, it was said. But anyway, I think maybe as I've gotten a little older, I'm probably not as volatile as I used to be. I think many people have heard me say before, one of my prayers in church on Sunday is don't get angry and control your temper and don't let your emotions make you do something that you'll be sorry for. So I've been a little laid back, and at times it's been hard to bite my tongue relative to some of the things that we've done to shoot our foot. Not just shoot our foot, but shoot our foot off. So I got a lecture about why don't you show a little more intensity on the sidelines when the players aren't doing exactly what they should do. So, you know, when we snapped the ball, when we didn't have a snap count on third down and hit the guy in the leg, and you know, we'd taken a couple sacks, and I had about enough of it. I thought that was a good time.
It worked out well. I mean, the whole thing worked out very well.
Yeah.
Now, does she have anything to do with what you wear on game day? I'd like to, because my wife, she's the clothes police, and my wife has more sense than I do. She's more intelligent than I am, and she knows what looks bad for me. But does she affect your clothing on Saturday?
Yeah, she picks most of the stuff out, puts it together, and sometimes tells me what I should wear.
Okay. Well, my main order, I've been told to never wear camouflage cargo shorts again. That's a bad look for me. But one question that a lot of people are asking concerning your intensity and the volatility, does NIL transfer portal have anything to do with that, with your demeanor on the sideline and how you treat players? Has that changed anything?
No. Somebody played a video of Terrion Arnold, you know, talking about me getting on him on the sidelines, you know, during the game. And, you know, I always tell the players, you know, when somebody goes in motion, they're actually telling you when the ball's going to get snapped. So if you're blitzing, you time your blitz on the motion. So here this guy comes in motion all the way across the field, and I know they're not going to block him if he blitzes right. And he waits until the ball snapped before he times up his blitz. And nobody blocked him. They completed the ball, F angle to the back, and he got a first down. So it was one of those moments where, but I think, you know, players, as long as they know that you care, they don't care what you know until they know that you care. And I still care about the players the same way I always have. I don't care anything about any of that stuff. I don't try to treat them better or worse. You know, I don't envy anything that they have or the opportunities that they get. I'm all for them being able to, you know, have a better quality of life while they're going to school. But I also continue to try to encourage them that these are the things that you have to do to be successful. You know, you have to really become what you want to become before you can be it. You know, if you want to be the best player, you got to become the best person at playing. And then same thing with being a champion. You know, you got to be a champion before you can win a championship. So you got to do all this stuff up front, and it takes certain kind of habits. And, you know, sometimes different guys respond different ways. And none of that has changed for me. I don't think one bit about any of that stuff relative to how I respond to players, because I'm really all about what is the best way for me to try to get this guy to get it right. And it's really not about me, it's about them, and it's about helping them be the best players they can be, the best people they can be, make them do what they need to do in school to have an opportunity to develop a career off the field. I mean, all those things are, and they're challenging. I mean, it's a challenge to, you know, get guys to do the things they need to do. You know, one of the things that I think we all have to live with a little bit more in society is people are a little bit more affected by external factors. And I think that's, you know, a consequence of the internet and all the TV and all the things that you see, you know, and these guys are constantly getting feedback from external things. And, you know, we're really trying to get them to have sort of internal goals and aspirations of what they want to accomplish and what they want to do, and not be affected so much about what happens outside. You know, I even told the players, I said, you know, when we get criticized, you guys really respond in the right way. You know, like after the South Florida game, you know, even though we won the game, we didn't play very well, and we were getting criticized, and everybody was like, you know, what can I do to get better? How can I do this? Can we practice better? What can we do? And why do you have to get criticized from somebody you don't even know, from Adam's house cat, to get motivated? You know, you should be motivated because you want to be the best, and based on what you did, what your performance was, how can you make that better? So that's something that we really have to deal with a lot with, you know, young people now. And it's challenging to get them to focus on what they can control and not worry about what everybody else thinks.
With the understanding that you have rules that apply to everybody. How much leeway do you give yourself and your other coaches to vary based on what motivates player A versus player G versus player X? How much leeway is there?
Well, I don't think there's any leeway in terms of what the rules are. The rules are the rules. All right, so we got rules for class. If you miss class or you're late for class or you miss a tutor, you get a point. It doesn't matter what kind of personality you have, whether you're obsessive compulsive, whether you're not motivated. That doesn't matter. That's a rule. Now, how we treat each one of those individual players to try to get them to do the right thing, that's a different story. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
I mean, we're trying to change their behavior so that they have a better chance to be successful. And I think, every guy's a little different when it comes to that. But you don't change the rules based on someone's personality. There's principles and values of the organization and their standards. And everybody has to buy into them. Now, how we get everybody to buy into them and do them is different. Because everybody's an individual and everybody's a little bit different. That's one of the things that I think we've done well through, the whole psychological mental health program that we have going with, a couple really good psychiatrists that help us know our players better in terms of how can we get them to do the right things, how can we get them to do the things they need to do to be successful based on their personality type and their psychological disposition.
We're going to come back. We're going to continue with the coach and with our media guest, James Spann. We're live here at Baumhauer's Victory Grill. Hey, folks, you can stay cool this season at Bryant-Denny with a free non-alcoholic drink of your choice when you purchase a limited edition Bama Yeti. These vintage Yeti cups are only available at Bryant-Denny Stadium. Elevate your game day with Yeti. This is the Crimson Tide Sports Network from Learfield. Time to go to the phones for our first caller of the evening. Yes, indeed it is Pee-wee time, brought to you by Alabama 811 to help prevent injuries, outages, and loss of life. Call 811 or visit al811.com. Before you dig, remember it's free, it's simple, and it is the law. Pee-wee, welcome into the show, sir. How are you?
I'm doing well, Eli.
Good.
Coach, how are you, sir? I'm doing well. Coach, this week is probably going to be the toughest test that our offensive line has faced this season. And I was just curious, one of the big matchups is probably going to be at the left tackle position. I was just wondering how you would assess Caden's progress this season, getting better, and how his preparation for this week has been.
Yeah, well, I think that Caden Proctor probably played his best game last week. There was a very challenging defensive front that we played based on their system and their scheme, how much they blitzed, how much they moved, and I thought he handled that the best he's done all year. So that's hopefully something that will build his confidence. Now, this week these guys have probably 6 or 7 guys up front on defense who are really, really good players. They got a couple guys that are really good pass rushers, and they'll obviously try to isolate. A lot of times on third down, they're going to have 6 guys up in the box, so that means 5 of them are coming, 1 of them's covering the back probably. So they're going to create some one-on-one situations where, everybody's going to have to block somebody, and they're good guys. But this is the kind of challenge that, defines who you are, as a competitor, as a player, as a person. And you should embrace, these kind of challenges when you play against really good players like this. And then, we got to do some things to help them. We can't always leave open edges for people to just get, 2 yards outside the tackle that can speed rush and, beat them up the field and all that. And the quarterback's got to do a good job of, managing himself in the pocket when he steps up, how fast he gets rid of the ball. So, all these things are important, but it's going to be important that we have a solid pocket in this game. If they can push the pocket in the middle, they got good edge rushers, and that means you can't step up, and that's when those guys become most effective. But both of our left tackles are making progress. Both of them have played. Caden has obviously played the most. He's a freshman. He's got a lot of upside, and we just got to keep helping him get better.
Coach, conversely, when Wigman went down with the injury for Texas A&M, how much did Jimbo and Bobby Petrino have to change their offense when Max Johnson came in? Is it the same offense? Is it executed to give Johnson the strength to, using his talents? How have things changed?
I don't think they changed at all. I think
Okay.
they have a system. I think both quarterbacks are very effective in that sixth system. Max has got a lot of experience. He started a whole year at LSU. He's played a lot of games at A&M, last year. And, they got really good receivers. They got a very good system on offense. They got a good scheme. They got balance. They run the ball effectively. And they can throw it, and they make explosive plays, and both quarterbacks are capable of doing that. Max is not probably what you would classify as a runner, but he's smart about when do I get out of the pocket, when do I run, when do I get a first down and get down. So I have a lot of respect for both of those guys, but I don't think there's any difference at all in how they play offense when they're the two of them, whichever
Gotcha.
one's playing.
James Spann? jump
Coach,
in.
there's a hot rumor floating around on social media, and I have to live on social media, that Milroe is hurt. Any truth to that?
Let me ask you a question. I mean, you mentioned this social media thing a couple times.
I have to live in this world. It's a bad world.
I have to ask you, because I never associated being a quality professional meteorologist that you are, that would have anything to do with social media.
That's where most people get their weather information. They get it on Facebook, Twitter, TikTok, Instagram.
They don't look out the window anymore?
No. So I have to live in that world. You wouldn't believe the stuff I see over there. It's brutal. And let me just say this. You don't know how hard this man's job is. Anybody that's critical of this guy, it's unbelievable. You have 100,000 people that want to they're more of a football coach than you. They know more about it than you, everybody else. And it's the same thing in the weather business. They all know more about it than me. And it just drives me crazy. I coached one football game one time in my entire life. It was a Division I spring game. First play I called was a flea flicker. One of my guys ratted me out, told the other team it was a total train wreck. But what this guy does is extremely hard. And let me say another thing about what he does. You see Coach Saban for a fraction of what he does on television. How many hours a day do you work?
Probably 12 to 14.
So
Every day.
what percentage of this are you publicly viewable on television? Hardly any of them. You don't see what he does to motivate his players, what he does to encourage these young men. So just understand that, okay? I just want people to understand that. This is hard. It's really hard.
But, the other good thing is about people who care, even if you don't like what they say, there's at least people who care. Because I've been places and coached before where nobody cared.
Yeah.
All right, so that's worse. All right, but look, I wouldn't want to coach any place, all right, where people didn't have high expectations and they didn't care. And I try not to be defined by what other people think or what they say in terms of the kind of person I am or the kind of coach I am or how we work with players and how any of that stuff that I respond to any of that stuff. Doesn't affect me because I'm not on social media. I don't hear it. I don't see it. And I just want to do a good job of helping our players get ready for the game. And I know that if we don't play good and something that we do doesn't work, we will be criticized. That's a given. And, sometimes we get criticized when we win, too, which, I get that. But I'm our biggest critic. I'm the guy that says, when is enough enough? But I say that to the players because, when is enough when we don't slant the right way and the guy runs for 15 yards and a first down? Or we get cut out of our gap and the guy runs for 29 yards and a first down. People don't even know that's happening. I know it's happening. And I know why it's happening, and I know why we're not having success. And most of the time when we don't have success, it's as much what we do as it is what the other team does. And that's what you keep harping on with the players to try to get those things to be corrected so that they channel their energy in the right direction. You say attention to detail, but what details really matter? People are emotional. They do crazy stuff. I saw a quarterback in the NFL get hit, and 3 plays later he goes and hits somebody and gets a 15-yard penalty. That's not really channeling your emotions in the right direction. This race car driver flipped somebody the bird, and then the guy passed him up and won. That's not really paying attention to detail and important to details that are going to help you win and be successful because you're not challenging your emotions in the right direction so that you can get the kind of focus to pay attention to the details that matter. And those are the things that I think we keep harping on with our players. And I'm our biggest critic. We're all working to try to get it right, but I don't think that people should think that college athletes are not pros. They're not pros. They're college young people who go to school. They got other things in their life. They got family. They work hard in football. They spend a lot of time. And everybody should appreciate what they try to do to be successful. And when we don't have success, guess who feels the worst? The players and the coaches. As bad as the fans think they feel in terms of how they want to criticize somebody, nobody feels worse than the players. Nobody feels worse than the coaches and everybody who's working hard to try to get them to get it right, because, you know, it's what we do. It's what it's our goal in terms of what we're trying to accomplish and what we're trying to do. And it's disappointing when you come up short.
Yeah. Hey, got an interesting question here from a Nick Saban Show reader on AL.com. Robbie in Rock Hill, South Carolina, says, "Hey, Coach, I saw the feature on last week's Coach's Show discussing the sports nutrition program. It's impressive to see the level of detail that goes into maintaining a championship team. Roll Tide." I mean, there was a lot that goes on behind the scenes, as you and James were touching on before.
Well, I don't think anybody thinks or really realizes how scientific, you know, everything has become.
Yep.
I used to look at a player and say, you need to lose 20 pounds. Just from looking at him. That's like so antiquated now that we can do muscle mass, body fat, hydration, functional movement test on a guy and know exactly what his body fat should be relative to his muscle mass, and how are we going to change that through diet and exercise and get him to the right weight so he's most efficient and most productive.
Interesting.
But it's the same thing in the weight room. You know, you used to say, how much can a guy bench press? I don't even know how much guys bench press anymore. Everything's explosive movement, and guys get feedback on how fast they move the bar and how much power and how much explosive movement they have comes up on a meter, you know, right when you're doing it. And we have a baseline on every player on our team on explosive movement, speed, and power.
Okay.
And I used to have to look at the team and say, man, we look tired. I need to cut down practice.
Now you see it right there.
I got a baseline on every guy on the team. They might think they're tired, but I say, hey, Cat, look at here. You're going up. You're getting faster. You're getting more explosive. You're more powerful. Mm-hmm. You think you're tired, but you're not physically going downhill. You need to get your mind right and let's go. So, and in some cases, like when Smitty was here, you know, he was a little frail, a little thin,
right,
and he was the hardest working, fastest runner, run every route. You know, his speed would start going down. Say, Smitty, cutting down your reps. So, but you used to have to do that with the eye test. And that's like, man, it's hard to figure out what's under the hood when you don't really know for sure just looking at somebody. And I told a player once he had to lose 20 pounds. He weighed 340 pounds. I said, you got to get down to 320. He's a defensive lineman. He got down to 320. It was horrible.
Really?
It was horrible. He was so much better at 340. And so, but it was just on eye test.
Yeah.
The guy really needed to weigh 340. I mean, it wasn't, so he just looked too heavy to me. So I made a lot of those mistakes in the past where you don't make any of those mistakes now because it's all scientific in terms of the approach. And because the players get immediate feedback. You know, we used to run 16 110s and we'd run 10 40s. We call it the Springfield test, and we time every one of them with 15 seconds rest in between. And how much your 40 time went down over that time determined the level of your conditioning. Mm-hmm. We didn't do any of that. I know every day we have GPS on every guy. You run 20 miles an hour. How many times you run 20 miles an hour a day? It's on GPS.
It's right there. Yeah.
Yeah. So you got so much data and so much information, people don't even realize, you know, and I think it's so helpful to player development that you don't have to make these sort of decisions based on not good information. Now you have really good information.
I bet you could never have seen this coming back in the days in West Virginia when you were playing on some dirt field somewhere or whatever it might have been.
Yeah, we didn't even have any weights where I played. We didn't have a weight room. We didn't have anything.
Yeah.
I
We
want to ask
didn't
you
do
a quick.
calisthenics. We didn't do conditioning. We just scrimmaged every day in the dirt, and it was dirt too and dust.
Yeah.
Coach, one quick question. When you worked for your dad in that gas station, are there any lessons that you learned working for your dad in that Chevron gas station that you still apply today? in
It was a
coaching?
golf station. We didn't
A
even
golf-
have, we
golf
didn't even
station.
have Chevron back in those days. All right? I mean, it was Esso. We had
Esso.
Esso,
Esso.
yes.
Okay.
We didn't have Chevron. There was no, they didn't come together yet. Yeah, I learned a lot of lessons. Man, I'm telling you, I learned a lesson to how to respect other people. I can tell this story, maybe I told it before, but there used to be a hobo, and he walked the railroad track. Our station was down in the valley, and the railroad track went around the side of the mountain. And he used to walk the railroad track and come down. My dad would give him coffee and cheese crackers, every morning. So I was in there changing tires, and we played a game the night before. And I don't know if we lost or I just played bad or what. And the hobo was drunk half the time, but in the morning he was a little bit sober. But he was getting on me. And I told him to go someplace.
Right.
Take a
All
hike.
right, take a hike.
Yeah.
And my dad was in his office, and I was on this tire machine, breaking down this tire. And this is the last spanking I got. I was about 15 or 16 years old. And all of a sudden, whap, man, right on the butt.
Whew.
And he says, I'll never want to hear you talk back to an older person again.
Wow.
So I've respected the hobo from then on. There was never any question about how you were supposed to do things, what you were supposed to do, how you were supposed to do it right. And if you didn't do it right, he made you do it again. So there was a standard. We're still trying to live up to it.
Yep. We're coming back. We've got a lot more to come with the coach, with James Spann, and with you as well. If you'd like to join the conversation, feel free to tune in and call 877-202-BAMA. That is the Yellowhammer Brewing Hotline. Back after this on the Crimson Tide Sports Network from Learfield. We welcome you back. The Nick Saban Show live from Baumhauer's Victory Grill. We were talking before, gentlemen, about stuff that goes on out of the sight of the general public. I had a gentleman come up to me here at the restaurant, Coach, not this Thursday, today, but last week. He is from the Community Soup Bowl, which, as the name implies, they feed the hungry in the community. And he said, do you realize that there's not a day goes by, seemingly, that I don't open the door and there's a Crimson Tide player there to help us serve a meal? A lot of folks don't realize, and he said, and we don't always ask. He said, they just show up. They want to do something for the community. That's the kind of people you want to have representing your university.
Well, I think, Linda just showed me, was it 561 hours of community service that our players did since football season started, or the last month or something like that. Mm-hmm. And I think that's one of the things that we try to promote, for our players, to have compassion for other people. I think that's one of the, most important qualities anybody can have. And you get a lot of positive self-gratification when you help someone else. And I think they grow and learn and realize that. So we have a lot of guys on our team that really look forward to, whether it's reading at Rise or, helping in the food kitchens and different things like that. And I think it's good for them. And I think one of the things that really, really started that was when we had the hurricane in 2011.
Yes, we will.
And the players all came together, and they all wanted to give back to the people in the community and the fans who had supported them. And they said, let's go support the people who supported us. And they did a phenomenal job, and I think so many guys got so much positive self-gratification from that it's just become kind of a culture, in the program, that players wanted to do stuff in the community.
It was wonderful to hear from that gentleman. I appreciate him taking the time to come by and tell me about it. James, jump on in.
So, Coach, going back to April 27, 2011, how did that affect you? And I've seen so many interviews with you, and I've heard you talk with so many people about that, but personally, not as a team, but personally, do you still think about that day? Do you think about what happened and the people that suffered so much on that day and the loss of life and the humanitarian crisis we had here?
Yeah, I certainly do. But probably the thing that I remember most, and I think this is sometimes something that, we don't realize how important it is, we try to do a lot of things for a lot of people. I mean, Miss Terry was phenomenal. She bought, hundreds of Walmart cards for people. We built 13 houses or whatever we built. We spent a lot of money trying to help other people. But the one thing that I learned is I would go to the places where they were serving people who were homeless food. Mm-hmm. And I would just go there and sit with guys and eat with them, and they'd tell me they lost a pickup truck or whatever. And all the millions of dollars that we spent helping people was important, but it was most important to have a presence, to be there. So many times people say, well, I'm not going to go. There's nothing I can do. Yeah, there's something you can do. I mean, just to be present, to listen and support the people who are there who have lost something or need somebody to, talk to or whatever. That was the greatest lesson that I learned from that whole tragedy, myself personally, was how much is important to just have a presence when people need you. I mean, you can say, hey, there's nothing I can do, like we had Katrina, and somebody flies over and says, wow, nothing I can do about that. Yeah, there's a lot you can do. Just be there. I mean, being there and supporting people, I think, is sometimes way overlooked by so many of us.
It's a good point. We have a visitor here at the restaurant, Coach, with a question for you. Hi, ma'am. Good evening.
Hello. Hey, Coach. I'm really happy to be here. Great to see you. You have two teams coming out on Saturday with really strong fan bases. It's a rivalry that everyone's really excited about. Can you speak to that rivalry and talk a little bit about what you're expecting to see on the field and in the stands?
Well, I know that this is one of the toughest places we've ever had to play. When we went over there 2 years ago and actually lost, in a really close game, it was the loudest, most difficult place to play. They have great tradition. They have their military folks and all that, and there's great tradition in what they do. I think the rivalry is because they have a good program and a good team, a good coach, a lot of good players. And this game has always been sort of a pivotal game where it sort of lands in the season relative to how Alabama does, how they do. So, and when you're playing on the road, that makes it even a greater challenge. So, but we have rivalries with lots of people. Everybody knows about Auburn and Tennessee, but LSU has become one, A&M has become one, and it's because the quality of the programs and the importance of the games when we play them, in the season. So, but these kind of challenges, as I said before, they define you as a competitor, they define you as a person, in terms of how can you stay focused and keep your poise and be able to execute and control your emotions in the right direction so that it helps you lead to successful behavior.
Thank you for joining us. They've got Owens, they've got Daniels, they've got Moss, talented running backs all. That leads me to the next question from the Nick Saban Show readers on AL.com. Paul is up in Decatur and says, Coach, would you comment on the overall growth and development of our defense thus far this season?
Yeah, our defense has done well. We've given up 14 points a game or whatever. But the biggest thing with our defense is when they play with intensity and a high level, and they play together and they communicate, and everybody's playing sort of the kind of relentless physical style of play you have to have a good defense. We have been really, really good. But there have been times when we have these little sort of lapses, I call them. You can never relax as a competitor. You can never relax in a game. I mean, just like when we got up in the last game, 14-0, and we intercepted a pass and run for a touchdown. the next couple series on defense, we didn't play the same as we'd played up until that point. All right, then I have to get them in a huddle on the sidelines and, kind of do a little ranting and raving. And then we go finish the game and play fairly well in the fourth quarter. But they could have got right back in the game really easily. It was a 10-point, 14-point. You're playing on the road. You let the team get back to 7 points, one possession game. Players don't understand you can never allow yourself to let up on your level of intensity in terms of how you're trying to perform and do what you do. Because that's when you miss tackles, that's when you miss assignments, that's when you get cut out of gaps, and you're allowing the other team to gain momentum, and that's helping them get back in the game. So, especially on defense. Offense, every now and then you have a bad play, you get to punt.
Yeah.
On defense, when you have a bad play, it usually has worse consequences because the other teams can score and get back in the game.
When we come back, we're going to hear from the coach and James Spann one more time. This segment of the Nick Saban Show brought to you by Coca-Cola Zero Sugar. With zero sugar and refreshingly delicious, is Coca-Cola Zero Sugar the best Coke ever? Well, find out for yourself. This is the Crimson Tide Sports Network from Learfield. Welcome you back to Bob Baumhauer's Victory Grill here in Tuscaloosa. James?
Coach, a lot of people today have been asking you if you're interested in being the Speaker of the House.
You know what? I just was wondering what really happened there. What happened?
That was a weird deal when your own party votes you out.
It's strange. I don't know.
Well, all I can say is I don't ever get involved in politics, but we made 2 trips to Washington in the off season to try to plot some direction for where we're heading in college football, and with commissioners and presidents and all that. And Kevin McCarthy was, very hospitable and, listened and was very nice to us. So, but so was everyone else. It was really politically pretty refreshing on my part to be able to see how things operate and how people there really are interested in trying to make things better.
But I think the answer to the question is no.
Yeah.
No interest in that. Well, and let me chase one quick rabbit. We have an odd distraction during the Arkansas game. A solar eclipse will take place during the game.
You're kidding.
During the game. It's going to happen during the second quarter. It's not a total eclipse. It's a partial eclipse. But there's going to be a distraction. And we're going to have to remind everybody, don't look up at that because you could damage your eyes. But this leads into the question, you live with distractions every day. How do you prevent these distractions from affecting your team's character and their preparation and their readiness for a game?
Well, I think that's a really good question. And I think that to get players not to focus on external factors, it's no different than when you play on the road. Is the crowd affecting you? Is the scoreboard affecting you? All these things that you're going to play one way when you're ahead, you're going to play different when you're behind. Why wouldn't you just play the best you can play all the time? And these are the lessons that we're trying to teach, all the time to guys not to be affected by external factors. Now, this is a new one on me. I didn't know that, and I've never had to deal with that, honestly, in my entire coaching career. So you may have to coach me up on how to handle this distraction.
All right, we'll talk after the show's over.
Yeah, but you're right, though. Make sure you don't stare at the sun.
We
That is
have
gonna be
to message everybody in that stadium, do not look up there unless you've got the glasses on. So we'll.
How do you know it's going to happen in the second quarter? Do we even know what time that game's going to be?
The game kicks off at 11. So
it's 11 o'clock game.
In the peak
well,
of the solar...
You know more about it than I do. I'm like, I'm one game at a time.
The peak will be about a little after 12 noon. So in theory, it should be in around the second quarter. So and maybe it will be an overcast day and nobody can see it. But I'm afraid it's going to be a distraction. So we will remind everybody in the stadium, don't look up unless you've got the glasses.
And folks, you see what you can learn by joining us every Thursday. If you've not been with us every Thursday for these last 17 years or so, you've missed learning all sorts of stuff. One thing we won't miss tonight, though, is Coach Saban's final word. It is presented by Mercedes-Benz. Remember, the vehicles are all electric. The feeling is all Mercedes.
Well, you heard me say earlier that, the challenges that you have sort of define you. They define you as a person. They define you as a competitor. And when you have these tremendous challenges, playing a good team on the road, tough place to play, and that's got to be something that everybody embraces. It's a great opportunity for our team. We need all the support that we can get from all of our fans. And, I would say that, being positive with our players is really, really important. It's important to them. It's important that they feel like all the hard work and dedication that they have to try to be successful is something that you appreciate. We're not going to win every game all the time, but hopefully we're going to try to make you happy as much as we can, but certainly appreciate what these guys are trying to do to be successful and us to continue to build on having a successful season. And this game is always one of those games that's pivotal. And I think everybody's very aware of that, and I know our players are and our coaches are, and we've challenged everybody this week to, kind of reach the next level of how we can play and how we can perform as a team.
Coach Nick Saban, always a pleasure, sir. Thank you for your time. It's always great to chat with you.
I love it that James was here.
And Coach,
Yeah,
here's a
good.
respect the Polygon shirt for Coach Saban because he respects the Polygon. You're the man, Coach.
All right, thank you, man. I appreciate it.
Thank
Take
you.
care.